One.
Well, that escalated quickly. That really got out of hand. I mean, like the last 24 hours, I had a plan, and then you know what? The damn Glazers had to go and screw it up for me, as they so often do. I'm Mike. This is the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. Even if you are only a tangentially aware soccer fan, you know where this conversation is going tonight, and we will give uh, our uh, guys, our pundits, an opportunity to weigh in on the news from yesterday. The announcement of this creation of a European Super League led by the Big Six in England, Manchester United, Manchester City, Tottenham, Arsenal, uh, Liverpool, and Chelsea, and joined by six other teams from Spain and Italy: Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, Barcelona, the two Milan clubs, and Juve. And it really has shaked, shaken the sporting landscape. Uh, it's got people agreeing with people who they never thought that they would agree with. As you ever told me that I would even partially agree with something that came out of Nigel Farage's mouth, I'd have slapped you upside the head. But hey, sporting cataclysmic events often make really strange bedfellows. It's really fun when it's championships and we all get to celebrate, but then you get things like this. So we're going to talk about it. And as much as anybody else, I think that we all need to process it. So a lot of what you're going to hear is just us walking through it. I will be the first to admit that Stead and I have talked about this numerous times on the show. Matt and Sean, who are with me right now, probably heard me at one point earlier in the year say, like, I thought this was something that might need to be looked at as a way to potentially save football post COVID. My idea mirrors what actually occurred, although in my mind, quite a bit more money was going to be going back into the various football federations. It was an opportunity for UEFA to head this off, get involved and say, we were going to do this and sanction this for a year or two to pump money back into the football federations to prop up the lower income leagues and federations. That is clearly not going to be what's happening. We have talked. We are as guilty as anybody else of hyping up big games between these 12 clubs and being very excited when they occur. Um, but at the same time, I don't think that there's one of us that is really thrilled that this was the outcome of the road that they decided to go on. Uh, I will also say up front, in the interest of dialogue, there are going to be points in time during this conversation where I have to play at devil's advocate, so I may have to take some views that run counter to my own. Let me be as blunt as possible. I don't like this. I think that while I am not against, as I have stated, this idea of some sort of European Super League where we get to see these teams play more regularly, in my mind, it was something that would have been created for the benefit of the game as a whole, not just for the enriching of these 12 clubs, right? And I understand that these clubs have suffered from financial hardships, just like every other business in the COVID world. And that has no doubt played a role in accelerating this proposal. However, this is a case of a bunch of billionaires complaining that they're not getting as much money as they would like. This isn't to benefit the sport. It isn't to grow the sport. It isn't to bring more viewers in. It isn't to help out the football federations of Northern Ireland and Moldova. This is purely for the benefit of these 12 clubs. And when you hear Florentino Perez say, well, everybody will be happy because we'll buy more players, you know what it's really about. We know what time it is, right? So throughout the course of the next 2 hours, pretty much all of our guys will filter in at one point or another to offer their opinions. But right now, I'm joined by Stead. Stead, how you doing?
Uh, Perplexed, I'll say perplexed. Lots of like you, lots of mixed feelings about this. I know that on the previous version of the show, we spoke extensively about this topic on multiple occasions, and the idea behind it was something that we found to be rather enticing, especially from a standpoint of two fans who are on the other side of the Atlantic, who are tuning in to view as many games as we can, and often the ones that we're privy to are the big games that came midweek. And that was also, though, before we saw how the networks over here were limiting access to things like Champions League and Europa League. And now that we're and just kind of seeing how our views and our access has changed based on how interest has grown over here, it seemed like it would be a relatively good idea to have them all sort of in this jumble. But now, as it's grown and as you're seeing different leagues sort of line up with different networks over here, and we're seeing all these different streaming aspects to it, and you're looking at this, and it's just, it really, really, really does reek of the I'll just say it, the corruption that is in UEFA and that's in FIFA. And you're kind of wondering how is what these teams are doing, whether or not we like it because of the rivalries and the traditions and the games that we love to see week in and week out, are now appear to be threatened. But on the flip side, have there been lots of underlying issues that have been occurring in FIFA? FIFA is, we could talk about FIFA a whole nother different situation, but with UEFA, it's still kind of like I just kind of feel like someone punched me in the stomach, and I kind of got the wind knocked out of me, but I'm not put out yet. So I think I'm perplexed, and I'm having a lot of I don't know right now.
We got Coach Matt. How you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, like we've been saying before, Mike. It seems like it's been coming for a long time. I'm a little shocked at how it is, being rolled out. We don't know if it is, but I do put, like Stead says, a lot of this on UEFA and on FIFA. They had the opportunities to really stamp out like these big money, oil barons coming in and taking over big clubs and they try to, the falsities of FIFA fair play, or however you want to list them out. I think it really started from there. And like the fact that these guys, all these people came in, they're like, oh, we can come in, we don't really even have to adhere to the fans, and we can just start making a ton of money off of commercial success. We've seen it, Mike, with Manchester United. It's clear that we didn't even have to be successful in the table, and we would just continue to get sponsors, and money would just flow in despite us not making Champions League. And I guess now that the sponsorships are, there's not as many available now, or the market's getting crowded, we're trying to find other ways to guarantee money every single year. I think there is an aspect of it too. There's like more foreign ownership coming in and not really caring about the local fans and the people who are near, whose these clubs are near and dear to their heart, and they would go every single week to them. It really sucks overall, but it's not surprising. And it was going to happen one way or the other. I think right now we're just in a game of chicken, whether or not UEFA and FIFA stand firm on their threats.
And last but certainly not least, somebody whose opinion on this I'm really interested to hear, because of all of us, Sean, you are the only one who went through the vote on the Premier League and when that was proposed, and you were around to witness that. And how does this compare to that? How are you feeling right now that your beloved Arsenal are involved in this as much as they are?
I'm quite shocked, to be honest, and I think that was my reaction after a heavy weekend of overeating, overdrinking, and overindulging. When I woke up with a sweat at 1:30 in the morning, going, "Oh my God, what's going on in the world?" and looked at my mobile phone, it took me a couple of minutes to register what was going on. Firstly, I'm quite. On the one hand, I'm quite sad that Arsenal have taken this stance. In fact, not quite sad. I'm very sad. I think we're lucky to be included in this talks only because of Arsene Wenger. Otherwise, I don't know how we would be considered to be a top 6 club in this country. Spurs, they haven't won anything since 1961. I don't know how they're included in this. And if you're going to disclude teams like Leicester, who have won a league title in more recent years than Arsenal and Tottenham
And Manchester United,
and have quarterfinal the Champions League more recently than Arsenal has.
Yeah. And to discount them completely from the equation, I just find astonishing. And this will shake up the way football is in England. And do you know what? In a way, I've sort of almost got to the stage where I've had it now. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's broken something in me. I know I'm talking today. I'm only talking 24 hours after the announcement, but quite frankly, people are not going to be jumping on planes to go to Paris for a weekend to see us. I know they've not announced themselves, but I'd be very surprised if PSG aren't included in this. We're not going to be jumping on planes to go to Madrid every other weekend. That was kept. Those trips were kept quite sanctified by the fact that it was around either a Champions League or a Europa League. We're only getting used to those competitions that have only been around for about 20 years, and yeah, it just sort of stinks, basically. So I'm angry as well, Mike. So there we go. I know it's not coming across that way, but
no, I think it is.
People are pulling the rug from under our feet and treating us all as complete fucking idiots. And 6 clubs can basically fuck up the livelihood of the other 84. That doesn't sit well with me. It could be more than 84, but anyway, it doesn't sit well with me. No.
I think for us, it's a little bit different because as Americans, we've grown up with this system. This is what we are used to, right? We see this in all of our sports.
I know. I found this out. You can finish 10th in the MLS and you can still get a prize and still get through to the next.
We're the kings of the participation trophy over here.
But even if you look at our other leagues, you can even finish dead last and you're rewarded with the best selection of the new talent coming up.
That's what I was going to ask you guys, because I feel like that's our desensitivity.
And I would have agreed with you 5 years ago, but because of the access that we've had to the European football in recent years, I feel like slowly when Americans have grown the ability to separate what we see in the leagues here in the United States versus what we see in the leagues over in Europe. And what we've talked about on this show on quite a few occasions is whether or not MLS needs to have some sort of relegation system because the league is getting with so many teams. It's getting so big. And it's probably not a good idea because it's just not a good idea here in the United States. But as we've grown accustomed to the way football has been played, and as we learn more about the traditions, and how a lot of us have become fans of clubs that are the traditional power clubs in these European leagues, though, we are aware of what these structures are. So while I think 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have had as much of an issue with this, but now seeing as the team that I support has not had a very good run of recent form, and while it's negative, it's also kind of positive because you've seen the growth of other squads to actually be able to compete. And now that's now kind of like going away a little bit, at least in England's standpoint, that is bothersome and I'm not sure that the excitement that people might think about it over here is actually going to translate. I'm just not sure.
I think, to your point though, for us, when we grew up in this sporting world in the United States, where everything's based on franchises and everything's based on um, business, where you can have a team that is as sanctified as the Oakland Raiders move twice in our lifetime, right? And I'm not talking about the time they moved back to Oakland, go down to LA, come back, recapture the fan base, and then say, piss off, we're going to Las Vegas. To have the Rams move twice from LA to St. Louis and back. We've been through 2 different iterations of the Charlotte Hornets, right? How many teams we have seen just up and move and just basically leave their fan bases, right? We're used to that. And football, European football, offered us some sort of refuge where it wasn't, it was about the dollar, but it wasn't all governing the dollar. The fans still had something. The fans were still part of this. And you know what? It kind of pulled the wool off of our eyes. And it's like, okay, guess what? We're going back to this, right? Columbus Crew and the MLS were almost moved to Austin, right? Austin. Over a stadium. It's so normal for us to lose a team that we've grown up rooting for because they didn't get the stadium deal that they wanted. And that's 9 times out of 10 what it is. And this gave us a refuge. We knew that Arsenal was going to be Arsenal. Sean, if I'm wrong, I can only think of one team that has pulled that. And we saw what happened with Wimbledon when they became MK Dons, and just how reviled that decision has been, to the point where you don't really see any more of that. We don't see talk of, Manchester United saying, oh, you know what, we can get a better stadium built in London, so we're going to do it, right? We don't see, there's never been, as much as Chelsea has complained about playing at Stamford Bridge, they've never tried to move to Birmingham, right?
Yeah. I think that's like why I'm. Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
I think what we saw today is, at least in our perspective, sort of that purity being taken away. And I can only surmise from Sean's perspective and those of the English fans and the other, and let's not discount the fact that this is also affecting Barcelona fans, Real Madrid fans, Italian fans, right? This is not just a purely English thing, right? It may be the 6 teams that were driving it, but it's Florentino Perez who's out in front of this. This all started, if we go back and we look at our timeline, this started with an announcement in October from Joseph Bartomeu, as he was saying that Barcelona will join the new European Super League. And all of us sat around and said, what the hell is he talking about? There is no European Super League. Wow. What we didn't know was he was on to something. He was letting us know about something at that time. And he was a little bit more with it and on top of stuff than we was. But the other thing that you got to look at with that is, this does not happen unless Juan Laporta gives his blessing, right? So that's not only Bartomeu, but the fans elected Juan Laporta to come in, and he took them out too. So it's not just us. And all of the European fans are getting this. And I want to say sorry, I'm sorry, this is an American thing, and this is how we do business over here, and maybe we're kind of used to it. So, Matt, I want to get back to you before I bring in Andy and Cam to give us perspective on teams not involved in this.
Just real quick. I mean, I think you were kind of hitting the nail on the head. It's like, I feel sorry for the European fans, but it's like kind of the opposite of what Stead was. It's like, yes, I understand, like, we as fans, like, the more we've been, involved with European soccer and understand the culture, it's also created more time for American owners, and not just American, like foreign owners, to come into these clubs that are businessmen first. They're not owners. I think Zlatan said the other day, or the other, like a year ago, was talking about how football clubs aren't meant to make money, and people kind of like laughed at him, but he was serious. He was talking about like football clubs are communities, and he like, but the more Americans and more people that are driven by business and money and greed, and basically what, I don't want to make a political statement, but like basically what have created like the big bank system in the world right now, those are the people that are taking over these clubs, and they're only going to think about dollars at the end of the day. And us as Americans, we know that. You know, Mike, you talked about, you know, teams move cities just because they're pissed off that the city themselves won't use taxpayer dollars to build the stadiums. It's like, and these are billionaires that have money to build the stadium, but they just don't want to because they're too greedy. So it's just one of those things. It's just like not surprising at all. It's sad, but it's like it's inevitable, in my opinion. The more we allow them to.
So I want to bring in. I'm going to start with Cam. How you doing this evening, Cam?
Hey, not too bad. How are you guys?
Processing, my man. Processing.
Yeah, it's been a wild 24 hours, hasn't it?
You know, to think that a Old Firm Derby and Jose Mourinho getting fired could get bumped by this. It's kind of tells you this is a big one.
I mean, that's the one good thing to come out of the Super League is the Old Firm getting bumped to, you know,
yeah, we get
it.
to talk about something other than that. So
Yeah.
I want to get your take on this as a Celtic supporter, as somebody whose club is not necessarily involved in this, but potentially could be. What are your thoughts and opinions on this whole thing?
I mean, I think it's absolutely wild. The way that this has just progressed in the last like 24 to 48 hours. You know, with the Super League firing a shot, and then UEFA and FIFA firing a shot, and it's just escalating continuously. I know most of our fan base, from what I've seen on, you know, message boards and things like that, are disgusted. And then there's a small percentage of people that are like, well, you know, this might make our chances in Europa or Champions League a little bit better. But I think, you know, I think overall people are just, it seems like the world is now coming together, small clubs and big clubs, to sort of say, you know, this is terrible, this is horrific. And it's kind of interesting to see, you know, like Rangers and Celtic fans even coming together and saying, what the hell is happening here with football? Like, this can never happen. It's going to destroy, you know, our revenue systems. You know, people are, you know, Scottish Premier League, we'll be honest, is not the most followed, you know, league in the world, but it's going to push that even down further, you know, if something like this was to happen. So it's, yeah, I just was not expecting something like this to happen ever.
Andy, West Ham on the verge of qualifying for the Champions League, but it could look a whole lot different. Hey, maybe you all could win it, man.
Yeah, that's the funniest part of this is you look at a table without the 6 clubs, and it's like, whoa, West Ham are champions. It's pretty, you know, I can get used to that. But no, I want to echo basically everything everyone else has said. It's a pretty disgusting, greedy move, made with money in mind, obviously, without any of the history in mind. But part of me, I have this weird part of me that it's kind of like, let them go. I don't care. Like, I don't watch, when I wake up on Saturday mornings, I don't watch any of those clubs because I don't give a shit about the big teams. I watch Brighton versus Burnley because that is what interests me. I watch like random League Two matches on, you know, ESPN Plus or illegal streams because, like, you know, Leyton Orient's cool. Like that's like that kind of style is what interests me, and that's why I kind of fell in love with the sport. And I think those clubs are going to realize that the clubs that leave, if they leave, I think they're going to realize that they made a big mistake because so much of this is, you know, football is pretty romantic, and it's like the fact that a little minnow like Leyton Orient, I'm just using them as an example, they're never going to make it to the Premier League, but like they can dream technically like, hey, we could make it to the big time. And, you know, West Ham, not that little anymore, but we could go into, you know, Old Trafford and dream that we hold a draw, you know, would be pretty fun. Like, I think that's part of the greatness of it. And the fact that there's, you know, drama, there's promotion, relegation, there's just intense fan interest because of the history involved between these clubs and all that's at stake, and to throw it away just for basically guaranteed Champions League. I mean, look at Arsenal. What are you in ninth? And you're just like, oh, give us this, this glorified Champions League spot, I guess I'll call it. It's just every year we're going to be against the best teams because we deserve it somehow. It's pathetic in my opinion. And I hope they go, and I hope it falls in their face, and I hope they come crawling back and they start in the bottom tier of English football.
Pull the Rangers, right?
Yeah, it would be the funniest thing to me if that's what they had.
Could you imagine if the big six clubs were all in League Two?
It'd be awesome.
I was going to,
But then we couldn't
say
watch
that.
any of it either because it doesn't stream.
I was going to say that, but you know what the best part about that would be? That if they were all started in League Two, guaranteed 3 of them would be stuck down there for at least 2 years.
Mhm.
Tottenham,
Right.
Arsenal.
Yep.
I mean, Sean, I said we've seen this before, right? EuroLeague basketball did the same thing, right? And has become relatively successful. In a way, this, started with the Premier League and that development, and they saw that become successful, right? Are they just looking at and sort of tainted by the fact that they've been allowed to get away with this before and been successful, and saying, okay, people come around, they'll adapt?
Yeah, it's like, I'd only say there was different circumstances with the Premier League because they didn't effectively change the structure of the league in terms of promotion and relegation. The Premier League effectively took its own marketing rights, which is, we've seen over the course of the last 25 years, has worked phenomenally well for the Premier League, I'm talking about, in terms of TV contract negotiations, etc. So this is much more of a seismic move. We're talking about these teams leaving the league effectively.
But what they said was that they want to continue to compete in the league.
Oh yeah, they want
but they
everything.
don't. But they
Yeah, they
don't
want it all.
want to.
Yeah.
They want their own Champions League, right?
Some of their own
So they
midweek competition. Yeah.
midweek competition. So the idea, it's not that, I had mooted the extreme version where they were going to go away and form a 20-team league with no relegation, and they weren't going to play. And what we were going to get was essentially a Indian Premier League type system where they played each other over the course of, 6 months, home and away, right? And a league table, maybe probably playoffs. And then, very much like an Indian Premier League, Big Bash League, using cricket terms, NFL type system, right? They have said that they want to maintain their spot in the domestic leagues. So in a way, they're not trying to alter the domestic league system. It would be up to the FA to basically say to them, you can either stay in English football or you can do this, but you cannot do both. We will not allow you to do both, right? That would be the only way.
There's a rule. I can't remember what rule it is, but there's a rule in the formation of the Premier League which doesn't allow any team to compete in any other league. It's quite clear. There's no. It's no.
I think that's just about the only thing that could officially kill this right now would be the ban on. But it's going to come down to 2 things. And I'm sorry if I'm going on a little bit long. Gianni Infantino needs to come out tomorrow when he gives his remarks and very strongly say, I'm not in favor of this. If he hedges his bets in any way, shape, or form, this goes ahead, right? And the other 14 teams in the Premier League, sans the Big Six, will be meeting tomorrow. I imagine there'll be a strongly worded statement, but if they are able to vote and say, like, we will not, nor will any other team in England compete against these 6 teams, if that's their only revenue stream right now, and they're basically shuttered for the better part of 2 years, I think that then all of a sudden, because everybody's banking on being able to have your cake and eat it too. And if they're proved to that that's not going to be what happens, I think all of a sudden you start to see a lot of backtracking. All it takes.
I mean, are the American TV networks going to pay the current money they're paying for a league that doesn't have Liverpool, Man City, Man U, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs? They're not.
Yep.
It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So either way, one system is going to get completely broken. They're trying to create this new system. I don't know where JP Morgan have come up with. I can't even remember what it is.
3.6 billion.
Up to 10 billion though. They're talking even up to 10 billion euros. The number's 3.6, but the rumors are saying up to 10 billion.
Where's the money coming from, and who are they?
They have it.
They have it.
They have it.
Yeah. They're just they're teasing people. They're teasing the Netflix of this world. They're teasing the Amazons of this world to come into the market and chuck a load of cash. Football will become soulless. So I hear what Andy's saying, but unfortunately, if this happens, there may not be Leyton Orient. There may not even be a club to go to. Leyton Orient was owned by one of the UK's foremost boxing promoters. Yeah, he's a man with a fair bit of money. He's not a cronkier, admittedly. He's not. He's the guy that owns Fulham. But he's
Shad
got
Khan.
a fairly. Yeah, that's the one.
Shad Khan came out against this too.
Yeah, he did. Absolutely.
And they sold the club 2 years ago because they couldn't see a future. How there can be any more of a future now for the lower league teams, I've got absolutely no idea. But that £1 billion contract, I think it's over £1 billion, isn't it? The Premier League TV rights, that ain't going to be there. It's just not going to be there if these 6 teams go. Now, what might emerge from the Ashes is a different type of tournament, and I would be very envious if I was a West Ham fan or a Leicester fan, because you guys would obviously have a fairly good chance of winning the league, but it's going to be a different league with different players.
Yeah, especially
probably
with
second-rate players, because all the good ones are going to go and earn the money with the Super League.
Exactly. The
But
amount
that's
of money
only
being
if they're
dumped.
allowed to, if they follow through and ban them from international competition.
That's the elephant in the room. Cam, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that's the big. I mean, I forget how much they're being given up front. It's like 400 million or something like that, right up front. Like as Sean was saying, like the Premier League and all these other leagues are all the ones are already struggling to get good players with the amount of their financials that they have post COVID. It's just going to destroy every other league. They're not going to be able to remotely compete in the transfer market for any sort of good talent. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest, the TV, and then exactly that, the financials that they can use for staff and players.
But at the same time, we are leaving it to, this is not a conversation about principles versus money, right? Or money versus principles. This is money versus money. UEFA is getting pissed, and the clubs are getting pissed at UEFA because they're not getting a big enough piece of the pie. UEFA is getting pissed because they're not getting a big enough piece of the pie. Perez makes some good points about, the salaries, where the money goes, the lack of transparency in UEFA. UEFA and FIFA, certainly. I wouldn't trust FIFA to organize a piss off in a brewery.
No.
So
No.
there's another
FIFA can
scenario.
screw up a glass of water, man.
But there have been a bunch of players not bunch, but the players are starting to come out on these teams that are against this. I know Bruno Fernandes put out something today, on his Instagram. I know
James
Milner said something after the game.
Jurgen Klopp said something.
Yep.
Yeah, what are these teams gonna do if the players refuse? Because I understand it's not just and not just based upon we're not going to get the World Cup. It's they actually stand together and they don't do this. I mean,
well, that's going to be the big. That's going to be the big one.
Mm-hmm.
If Marcus Rashford can feed a country, and people start rallying around that, why can't Jordan Henderson and Harry Maguire come together and say we're on, we're the captains of rival teams and we're against this. Let's stand for this together.
If the players
I mean, maybe
threaten,
dreaming,
if
I
the
don't know.
players and the managers are the ones that say, like, we're not going to participate, we are not going to participate, then all of a sudden, I that's where I think you're wrong, Sean. I think they have to care. I think they have to care if the Messis, the Ronaldos, the Rashfords, the Bruno Fernandezes say that we will leave these clubs, because if this ends up as a league of second-rate players, because that's the only people that you can get to play on these teams, guys who say, I have no international future, so I will play because I'm not risking anything.
Okay.
Then-
Yeah, but that's very difficult to
Right,
do
but-
for a guy who's from some shanty somewhere and has a chance to make $50 million.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, you can make $50 million or you can make $1 million. Even though $1 million is nice, $50 million can take care of your entire family. So I'm not saying that it's right or it's wrong. I just think that is a lot to put on players.
Yeah,
and
but
as we've
when
known
you're
them,
But
dealing
then-
with, that's
Yeah, but-
great in the future. That's
Yeah.
great in the future.
Yeah,
That's
and but
true.
also,
Fine, fine.
so that's also go ahead. Sean.
Matt and then Sean. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah. So think of another scenario. The fact that these clubs can just go, we're going to go off and start our own league. Okay. Fuck the rest of you. We've got the pot of money. We can negotiate with the TV companies, guarantee everyone 400 million. What is to stop anyone from saying, we'll set up another England team? Fuck the FA. Here's the New England team that we're going to take from exclusively only from players from the European Super League.
I think that
Here's
would have a
the,
different
here's the New
feel
England.
to it.
And
I
now
feel
you,
like that would have a different-
now you
I
can
think it-
follow two England teams if you want.
I feel like
Yeah.
that would have a different feel.
So
to
you
it.
have two England teams that can suck at the same time?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I feel like that has a different
Exactly.
the feeling though, because like I feel like there is a difference of national pride versus where you make your money. I don't know. I just feel like that's different. I mean, now maybe they start like a UK team like they did with the Olympics or something like that, but
And compete in what?
Well, the
Yeah,
Super League has
I
already
still think
said they
they're
would
gonna-
host their own World Cup. They've already
Mhm.
said that they're willing to host their
All
own
right.
World Cup.
And
guess-
I think that's the
I
problem.
also think national pride is a bit overrated because as we've seen, guys will play for whichever.
Everyone
yeah.
cares about national pride.
No,
here.
they'll play for the country that will give them the most exposure. I mean, you got to think if you could take a lot of these American players, if Serginho Dest knew he was going to be a starter for Netherlands, he would play for the Netherlands before he
yeah,
played for
that's
the United
true.
States.
No, that's,
So,
that's
you know,
true. No,
it's-
yeah,
I mean-
Yeah, but I don't think that a World Cup born from players who play exclusively for those teams, while it
Yeah.
would have a lot of great names, would be compelling in any way, shape, or form.
like an all-star game round table, like
It'd
that.
be,
that's really
it'd
what
be
it was.
another excuse for a preseason friendly.
I mean, what
Right.
if they
Yeah.
did it differently though? What if they, rather than bar players from, the other leagues, from, the FA and things like that, what if they didn't bar those players? They allowed everyone into it.
What if they all came to the
If you
MLS?
We
Yeah.
take control of
I
the World
can't,
Cup,
I can't see something like that. There's no appetite for that, right? We can have,
I
we can
also-
just say there's an appetite to see these clubs because they are names, and it's Manchester United, it's Juventus. It's unless you take their history away from them, they're always going to be what they are. England are the Three Lions. If you suddenly put together an alternative England team, you
Four
put the-
horsemen.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we barely have enough Americans to make one U.S. men's national team work. You want me to think that there could be two,
Mm.
right?
That's a great point.
Just
It's a great point.
yeah, it's there's no appetite to see that. I don't want to see a replacement for the World Cup, right? The World Cup is what the World Cup is. As much as they want to talk about, and I will poo-poo the idea of expanding it, as much as I'm not a big huge fan of the Euros being expanded, like that is the tournament. I'm watching it for those teams, the national teams, right? And the players come and go, right? It's the jersey, it's the country. It's not that I can't see there being an appetite for them to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to pull it off. They need to shut that one down. And that's Icarus syndrome right there, right? They think they're
Like-
better, and better and uglier than they really are. right?
It's shocking to me though, because as we're going down a rabbit hole here, we can see that the potential for opening a can of worms that is way more enormous than they anticipated is
Mhm.
extraordinarily high. And you have 6 hacks here, well, 5 and our sports writer, who are the only ones who really are who are we can't be the only ones who are going down this hole. So you have to say, what are the implications here? I mean, we're talking about very, very real possibilities, not based on our own conspiracy theories and speculations, but of reports that we're seeing on Twitter of what UEFA is going to do and what FIFA is going to do. So and the Super League is countering, saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. So it's like, whoa, this looks like an entire cluster. And until you're talking about starting playing this summer, like, there's a whole lot of issues that need to be worked out well before you can consider any
It's a
any
game of
being
chicken.
blown.
It's a game of
Yeah,
chicken.
exactly. And so who's gonna blink? Who's gonna blink?
Yeah.
And what does that blink look like? Sean, and I'm gonna ask you this first. If this goes through, would you stop supporting Arsenal?
Probably. When I say stop supporting, I've invested 56 years of my emotional time into following this team. And I've been lucky enough to see some glory during that time and to have some really, really shit times. And that's what I signed up for. I used to go to Highbury when I was a student between 1982 and 85. It cost me £2.50. I'd walk up to the gate, give me £2.50, go and stand in the North Bank, happy as Larry. And over time, these clubs have. I moved back to London in '98 and was lucky enough to have an offer of a season ticket from a friend of my company. It cost me £160 for the whole
For a season ticket?
For the whole season. And I went to the
in
FA Cup final.
98 too? Oh my
98.
gosh.
That sounds
1998.
amazing.
So, I'd spend more in the pub before a game than I would on the entire season ticket.
That's unbelievable.
And so they've continued to take more and more cash off us. We moved stadium, if you take Arsenal as an example, because unfortunately, Arsene was fooled by FFP. And he thought that this was going to open the riches as far as we were concerned, and it didn't. And by the way, Arsene also mentioned this Super League in 2009. This is how long these chats have been going on in the background. Every time Real Madrid used to come and try and tap him up in the summer, I'm sure these discussions would go. And I just feel we've been duped. I'm very disappointed that the 6 that have come forward would even contemplate doing it in this manner as well, the way they've announced it, sort of, before the season even ends, just to create mayhem. And I don't think anyone wins. I don't think the Andy wins with West Ham. Yes, it might look nice suddenly with the big 6 not there. It's obviously going to give other teams a better opportunity, but it's going to break that contract. It's going to break that Premier League contract. And as it will in Germany and Italy and Spain, and this has ramifications. I mean, Barca and Real have to be behind this because they are completely skint and they are absolutely fine.
Oh, there's no doubt. Andy, you look like you were going to say something.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, I joked earlier about like, oh, West Ham could win the league, but like, it just wouldn't be the same. Like, it wouldn't be doing a Leicester. Like, the fact that doing a Leicester was so amazing was because
they beat the other.
They beat the bigs. Like they absolutely they knocked the big boys off. And so like if this happened, it didn't turn out to be, if West Ham won the league in a shell of a league, basically, it would not feel the same. It would not, which would suck.
Take this year for you, Andy. Like, you guys are in the Champions League conversation, but you're in a Champions League conversation in a league that involves these teams right now. It has required you to go and play these games and compete with these teams.
Yeah.
Like we talked about what it was like to be here, for West Ham supporters. And this goes to both you and Cam to a certain extent. Cam, the question is sort of different, but if this goes through, there's supposed to be 5 wildcard teams. If there comes a point in time where West Ham was invited, qualified, something, because they won the English League, sans these 6 teams, how would you feel about your team participating?
Yeah, I have this kind of like sick feeling a little bit, because I know if West Ham had been invited as one of those 6 teams, I know our owners would have snapped at the chance. That they demolished Upton Park the way they did to move to London Stadium to become this, this big team. Like, yeah, they would, without a doubt, they might poo-poo
And
the.
they've gone to Westminster, knocked down the Houses of Parliament, and built a stadium on top of that.
Yeah, it just I know that. I mean, the owners would take it because money talks. They might they might be Brits and not Americans, but they're still billionaires that have questionable past. These guys, I mean, they're not. So they would do it, and it would suck. And it I also fear a little bit that this comes about, and all these fans are right now saying, like, this is terrible, I'm going to stop being a supporter. But it comes out, and you're having these big matches against Real Madrid, and Liverpool knocks off a Barcelona team that's really good. That's people are going to watch, and I think people very quickly, but realistically, forget the anger and say, yeah, this sucks, but wow, how amazing of a matchup that was. We get that every other week we get to play these great teams instead of playing Pascal Gross
Leeds
from Brighton.
but Andy,
we can afford Jesse Lingard now.
The games become meaningless.
No, yeah, you're right.
They become meaningless because no one has properly explained what this league's about. They say minimum of 10 matches. So how does that league actually work? I think they're talking about the top 8 going into a knockout thing at the end. It's just all complete fucking nonsense.
No, what scares
me is, but they want the Americanized playoffs.
Yeah.
They want that. I mean, the playoffs in America bring so much money.
I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the playoffs.
Yeah.
You look at what the Indian Premier League, again, look at the league structure for the Indian Premier League, Sean. Like 2-month tournament, 4 teams, 4 out of 8 teams make the playoffs. They play each team home and away. And that's it. And that's what they want. It's surety. Business loves surety.
Yeah. From a fan perspective, though, it's scary, though. It's sad.
We'll never get to see legends like Pascal Sigon, Igor Stepanovs ever again. Do you know what I mean?
We'll miss there is something that will be missed.
Well,
Cam, I want to bring up this one point though with you. Celtic would be in a conversation for something like this, as far the name alone puts them amongst the Ajaxes. Yeah,
Just say
it's a
Old Firm.
valuable
The
commodity.
interest is there.
The interest is there for the Old Firm to be part of this. Now, something like this for Celtic could be a game changer in the profile of the club, what it could do for saving the club and how they would be able to function. But it would be the end of the Scottish football. Would you all be willing to do it?
I think the fan base, no. Again, I think like West Ham, the owners, absolutely. If that was put on a plate to them, 100%, I think they would, at the very least, like very much consider it. I think we've seen over the past year how much that the leadership and the board at Celtic just don't listen to the fan base, to be honest. It's all about the financial element of it. I think that's the biggest thing to come out of the clusterfuck this year, was just how much the upper leadership just, they don't listen to us. I think they would, and at that point in time, I think I'd have to find a very expensive tattoo removal expert, and I think I'd be distraught.
Yeah.
But something about it, I just could not support a team that would just, as you say, it would kill Scottish football.
Mm-hmm.
The Scottish League is really built upon Rangers, Celtic, a little bit of Aberdeen, a little bit of Hearts. And I think without those two, the rest of the clubs would completely collapse. They almost collapsed during COVID. a number of the clubs, something like 8 of them, came very close to collapsing just because of COVID. Something like this would wipe out the league in Scotland.
Hey, Cam, I just want to add a wrinkle because, like, I know for a while, I think it's probably a decade, maybe more ago, where they were discussing Old Firm coming to under the Premier League and the FA umbrella. How
Mhm.
similar would that be as far as the consequences for Scottish football? It's like kind of the same thing.
Yeah, so that's a conversation that's gone on. Sean probably knows it's gone on for God knows how long.
Yes, like since I started following it, they've been talking about this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it comes up every few years. Should we bring Celtic and Rangers into the FA? And I don't
Maybe Cardiff
personally.
and Swansea.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I just don't see it ever happening. I really don't. And again, I think if Rangers and Celtic were to leave the league, I think it would collapse. I really do think it would. I mean, maybe not in the same way, with the Super League situations going, maybe not as quickly, but I think over time, the Scottish League would collapse in both of these situations.
There is a precedent though, Cam, isn't there? Because, obviously when Rangers went into administration, they had to start from scratch. So there were 3 or 4 seasons, weren't there, with no Rangers in the Scottish Premier League, and the league didn't collapse.
That's true, but I mean, in that case, again, you had Celtic at least, and you still at least had, Rangers fans that were supporting them. Something like the Super League situation, we're seeing that some fans are like, I'm done. No more money is going to your pockets, things like that. Plus, there's the element of the TV deals. The Super League it's going to cut down on the revenue from multiple different leagues in terms of, TV deals and things like that. Whereas, when Rangers got relegated, those TV deals are still in place. So,
Well, Andy, Kim, we want to thank you for coming on and sharing your thoughts on this, giving us the perspective of 2 clubs who aren't involved in this whole entire thing. And we're going to bring in Coach G and British Will, 2 more fans of clubs who are in the middle of this. And Will, you have some very, very strong feelings about this European. So I'm going to give you a chance to go, full on Scouser Will, and let us know what you really think.
But I mean, it sort of distinctly reminds me of watching the game, the Aston Villa game, Liverpool versus Aston Villa. And I was watching it with my father, and we don't often watch football together, but I was watching it and I watched Roberto Firmino's goal get disallowed in the 45th minute or something along those lines, very late on in the half. And it was by a minuscule VAR margin. And it was something that I sort of almost expected. I saw that it was a close offside decision, and I thought there's a chance that this gets ruled off. And my father says, "Oh no, he's perfectly fine. He's completely level with the defender. Everything's fine. Not even close to offside." And I said, "Oh, just you watch. It's going to get ruled out." Lo and behold, 2 minutes later, I'm proved right. He said, "That's not football." And that's the same thing that we're going to see with the Super League. I mean, watching Liverpool versus Barcelona, Liverpool versus Real Madrid every week, that's not football. That's pure entertainment. That's pure, not entertainment. That's pure facsimile of entertainment. They say, oh, this is going to drum up excitement. It's going to be bigger games, more games, better games every week. I don't want to watch Liverpool play a Spanish club on Wednesdays, every day, every week. I want to watch that once, maybe, once in a season. Let's see if Liverpool can beat Real Madrid. They obviously can't. They got knocked out. Okay, that's really tough. That's sad. That sucks to be a Liverpool fan. That really hurts. But that means the next year, when you're playing them, when you've earned to play them, the next year in the Champions League, and you beat them, that makes it feel like just a little bit better. And if you can't watch that next year, You're going to wait. And the last time Liverpool played Real Madrid, it was in Kiev. They lost to them then. Next time, it was in Madrid and in Anfield. They lost once and they drew once. I was looking forward to the next time that they could play with Real Madrid and beat them. That was something that I was looking forward to. That was something that I would be able to hold over my friend's head who was a Real Madrid fan. And Florentino Perez, obviously the architect behind this, the owner of Real Madrid, he says, the game isn't popular with 16 to 24-year-olds. Football's not popular with 16 to 24-year-olds. I don't know what statistics he's looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But that seems to be either the most the biggest lie that's come out of his mouth
Yeah,
today.
it's just a flat out lie. I mean,
Because
yeah, it's just a flat out lie.
It's that age group doesn't spend money well.
No, their parents spend
16 to
money.
24-year-olds.
Their parents
Yeah,
are spending money on the
16 to
jerseys for the
24-year-olds
are
24-year-olds.
They're not going to
as a
buy it.
member of the age group of 16 to 24, being 23 years old,
Bullshit.
spending money on a jersey every week, I'm not going to be buying all of the club merch. But you know what? I can tell you, just about every single one of my friends supports a club and supports them pretty rabidly. That's where some of the biggest conversations and that's where some of the biggest friendships and rivalries start, supporting your club. And you know what? No, I'm not going to watch the Super League. I'm not going to watch Liverpool in the Super League. What's the point of that? That's a waste of my time. Because the biggest part of the relationship between me and someone who's watching a Spanish team is that I can say, last time we played in the Champions League, we beat you. Can't say that now.
I don't think
that last week.
yeah.
Oh, Liverpool lost to Barcelona. Oh, but the week before that, Liverpool beat Real Madrid. Oh, who gives a shit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what worries me the most about it is, I'm kind of like, I agree with your sentiment, but take it from somebody who is who may not be from this area, but whose family is and has been born and bred to support local sports here in Washington, D.C. And other than the recent iterations of the hockey and the baseball team, they've been notoriously bad for about 20 years. And so to say that I actually pay attention to the sport beyond the first couple of weeks when it's blatantly obvious the Wizards won't finish higher than 12th, I stop paying attention. Because the point is this, I know they're going to be back in the same position next year, and I'll watch the first couple of games again next year. Let's take the football team. The football team, which has only had one time in the past 30 years, they've had back-to-back winning seasons, and one of them was because the team was able to get a tie, lets you know as well. I also, as the team goes through, you stop paying attention. And what I fear the most is that if this Super League were to occur, we would have a situation currently where Arsenal is going to be at the bottom of the table. And I would have stopped paying attention about 3 months ago because we know they're not going to get relegated. And I know they're just going to pick back up again. And I'll just start watching again in August. And we'll see how long my interest lies before their fate is sealed and I stop paying attention. The beauty of the league structures now that all these teams are participating in is that even though your team's not having the best season, you still are paying attention to where they are on the table. It means something. It means something. And the problem is it doesn't mean as much with the current structures to me in the United States with the way our leagues are set up. And it's not saying that our leagues are set up incorrectly. It's just the way it is. And I don't mind that at all. But because the reason why is that one reason why that makes the European League so attractive is because you still pay. I'm still going to be watching how this team performs in April. I'm still going to watch how the team performs in May, even though they're not really going to win anything because I don't want them to finish below Leeds. That's important.
I can attest to what you're saying, and I think that is a major miscalculation in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is I've had season tickets, MLS season tickets before.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
The reason why I kept the season tickets was less about the product on the field, but just going and having a good time. It was fun, right? It was a fun way to go and spend an afternoon, have a few pints, sing, do all that stuff. But we knew the product wasn't any good, right? I can't say that I ever really watched a Philadelphia Union game outside of the ones that I went to, right? And with any sport, if they're bad, you tune them out, and you don't really start to pay attention until the playoff time, right? I think that they do run the risk with this because of this closed franchise system that is going to last for so long that the viewership numbers after the first couple of weeks could decline dramatically, right? This is I understand the business aspect. I understand that business loves certainty. I think that you're going to have a problem. I think that this is one of those things where if you say in 2 or 3 years that second TV contract may not be anywhere that they like it to be, because the viewership numbers are just going to go, your first 2 weeks you have that novelty factor, and then it's like the idea of putting an NFL team in London. Why do the NFL games do so well in London right now? Because it's a novelty.
And
But if you-
anybody that has an NFL jersey wears it to that game, no matter the team that's playing.
I know that.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd also
I-
just like go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna be extreme minority on this. I don't believe that it's gonna happen. I'm gonna go with the take, and maybe I'm wrong, Sean, and you can throw this at my face. I feel like we're going to get up in arms about this, and we're going to be really pissed off. But at the end of the day, if that's where the clubs go, I see us following them. And I see, or maybe not us, but I feel the vast majority of people are going to follow them. And especially the American fans are going to follow them. And they're going to find ways to make it exciting like they do with the NHL. The NHL, 16 teams make the playoffs out of 30. And that means, for the vast majority of the year, your team has a chance of making the playoffs unless they're one of the, the 2 worst teams that they're not going to make it. They find ways to get people involved and get people. Yeah, there you go. Maybe I'm too detached from that system. And I've watched United for a very, very long time. For over 20 years. And I just don't think that there's going to be this drop of fans. When I was in Barcelona and I saw the El Clasico Super Cup game, the amount of foreign fans in Barcelona, the stadium was completely sold out, but the amount of local fans compared to foreign fans, it wasn't even close. Foreign fans were just probably 75%. The amount of people, and that's what Real Madrid and Barcelona see. They see that, when you take the tours and when you go with it, you understand that's where all the money is. It's all these people traveling to see these mega clubs, to see Messi, to see Ronaldo, to see the great.
I think that's one of the big
clubs.
issues, Matt, is that this is such a global, and this idea appeals more to people outside of the European mindset than it does in. I want to bring in Coach G and Chelsea Mike. G, how's it going?
What's going on, gentlemen? How are you guys doing today?
So give us your thoughts on everybody's processing. I think everybody's feeling the same, just kind of what in the world did we get slapped in the face with?
Well, as soon as I heard Arsenal was part of it, I'm like, sweet, we're getting a bunch of money, but then we'll probably be last place. So the only positive really is just the kind of money. And like Matt, kind of did before, he's like, all this is money driven. All this is just how much they can put into their pockets. I'm kind of on the fence. We've been asking for this. We've been asking for this kind of Super League for how many years? And now we have it oh shit, maybe it's kind of bad. Maybe we don't want this. As an American, and I'm kind of, trying to get my head around as newbies of our national team, but a lot of our national teams are playing for these teams right now, like Juve, Chelsea, and so forth and so on. And if they're going to be part of this, they're not going to be doing that or international. So that was what's going to happen to our national team here, where we're trying to slowly build it up. It's going to dismantle us. It's going to dismantle a lot of players going to these teams because they want to have other avenues to show off their success, not just with their club team, maybe their national team, and so forth and so on. I don't know, man. It's just kind of cool to see that this actually could happen. I kind of like seeing that Liverpool will lose every single game against, Barcelona, Real Madrid. Too bad, Byron's not in there and so forth and so on. But it's going to water it down. I think the grassroots level truly will be hurt at this. I think the money or any kind of money that's kind of left over will be kind of zapped all the way up somehow, some way. Even though we have that 16 to 23 or whatever stat that, the young Will said, is the potential with all the money, but they don't have the money. They're the ones with the video games that are talking mad crap on social media, but that's all they're doing is talking mad crap. So it's really probably about the 25 to 40-year-olds, hey, that's us, kind of in that where we have that money, where
Anymore.
we can go, I know, right? Can we go to Spain to spend that money on the El Clasico where the locals won't? So they really should be pandering to us. But what do we want? We don't want it. The fans are kind of rejecting this. Fans are kind of up in arms. I already saw a T-shirt today, a day after. I forgot what team was wearing it, saying, "Hey, you know,
Leeds.
Leeds. Yeah, Leeds." And they're anti-against it. Like, there's a lot of things that are going on right now. However, is this truly gonna happen? Is there gonna be such a huge backlash to say maybe even the players don't want it? Maybe we don't do this, or they just throw it out there and like everything else, they kind of evolve and change the rules as they go and put more money in this pot, take more money in that pot. We really don't know. It's cool to see, but I think it's going to be hurting the team or hurting the game overall in the long run.
Mikey, you were definitely against this. And
I'm against this. I'm 100% against this. Let me tell you what, I don't think it's cool to see Chelsea play Real Madrid and Juventus over and over and over again. To me, it's cool to watch Chelsea, play Club Brugge and survive that, and then play Ajax, and then play Real, and then play Juve for the final. Like, to me, they never have to work for it. Think about it today. You saw today, right? That result today, Liverpool won, Leeds won. If this announcement hadn't happened, if we didn't know about this, that would have been a devastating result for Liverpool. Now it's who cares? This is going to take. I mean, even if the domestic league somehow they come around and they allow them to play, I just don't think the domestic leagues. I think they lose a lot, and I think that these Big 12 teams knew that. And that, I mean, their whole model is based on not getting kicked out of those leagues. If they do, if the Big Six English teams leave, they can go play their thing. I want to watch English soccer on Saturday. I don't care about European Super Tuesday. I don't know if this has been spoken about. But if you want to talk about bringing Americans into the game, you know what brought me into the game is going out on a Saturday morning with my friends and watching these games. I can't, 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, you just lost your Western Hemisphere audience because not all of us are lucky enough to be able to do that. And if, like Coach was saying, if it's supposed to appeal to us and not to the locals, well, we can't watch the games. So who are you doing this for? I mean, I think these clubs are, they're high on their own supply, right? They think that they're the only game in town, and maybe they are. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think that they have drastically overplayed how influential they are in the world, and they're not. I don't think it makes the game better to constantly play the same teams over and over again.
Yeah. I also want to say, Leo, the Italian, our La Liga correspondent, since we've been bringing up kind of like the La Liga, Real Madrid, kind of like spearheading this sort of thing. He brought up a good point, though. He said for La Liga, too, this is particularly poor because which league has had the best showing in Europe over the past 15 years? It's been La Liga. And so he says, think about the teams that consistently qualify for Champions League that haven't been invited. He's talking about Sevilla. He's talking about Valencia, and even Villarreal to some extent, who've actually been able to play Champions League. Don't forget, I believe 2 seasons in a row, Spain had 5 teams in Champions League group stage. So now you're sitting there going, well, Spain only has 3 teams coming. What happens to those 2 clubs who have been earning their spots in Europe, earning their spots in this top competition, and not earning it because they squeak in? They're earning it year after year after year. I thought that was a good point, and I told Leo I would make sure I shared that for him.
Can we get over the idea that these teams earned anything, right? It has nothing to do with the only thing that they earned to qualify was a large enough social media following.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah,
I'm not
because
disagreeing.
if it is based on current, we said it at the top, we can say it again. If it's based on current results, then forget Arsenal not being in there.
Mhm.
Inter Milan hasn't won anything since Jose Mourinho left.
AC Milan, they're
hasn't
ninth every
qualified.
year.
Yeah, AC Milan hasn't qualified for the Champions League since they won the Champions League. Right? It's been over a decade with both of the teams in Milan being down. Right?
Monaco is more deserving than Arsenal is right now.
But that's the thing. It's not about what deserves.
Yeah.
It's about the whole entire idea of commercial. This is not a sporting venture. This is a commercial venture, right? And that is why, our teams are involved in this, is because they are the biggest global brands, right?
Yeah.
Why would, if you wanted to do this based on sporting success, Borussia Dortmund, who they haven't talked to, should be in there, but they're not. It looks like Bayern and Borussia probably won't be, and Rob will be on hopefully later to tell us about it, because the fan ownership, the 50+1 rule, will probably keep them from doing it.
Would you say Man City has a type? Does Man City have that type of global following?
I think Man
Really?
City does now. I think Man City does now.
Okay, because I've yet
It's the
I don't
same
see
thing with.
I see more Swansea
see a
City
lot-
jerseys than I see Man City jerseys.
I see a ton of.
Yeah, we don't
I see a
have a
ton
regular
of
Man City
kids.
correspondent on this show.
Yeah, but that's by choice. There's
I mean,
nobody.
the
There
thing
is no
about
Man
Man
City
City-
fan that wants to subject themselves to the regular ridicule. We have one. When he decides that he wants to resubject himself to the regular ridicule that he will get coming on here and touting for Man City, we welcome him back. But that's been more by choice than by anything else, right? But I see a lot more Man City jerseys. They are much more popular amongst younger kids who are just because when you look at the players that they have, they play well on FIFA, right? They play well on FIFA. They're a great video game team, and that's
how they know 'em.
disrespect, but that's how they know them, and that's how they get into it. Los, welcome.
Good day, gentlemen.
I see you repping
Hey.
Orlando City today.
And
It
good
is a
morning.
good day.
Good morning, Sean.
Hi, how are we doing? It is a good day. That was the second thing that upset me today. You bloody sacked Jose. Ah.
Yeah, well, to be honest, the writing's been on the wall forever. well, maybe not forever, but since we got knocked out of Europa, and we aren't making any great strides in the Premier League. The only thing he had was the final coming up next Sunday. And I'm betting, and I don't know this for sure, but I bet there's a clause in his contract that says if he wins the Premier League, if he wins Europa or Champions League or whatever, or if he wins a cup final, then he gets some sort of monetary bonus.
Yeah.
And with the Sunday coming up, it's possible. We've beaten Man City a couple times in the last couple of years. Anything's possible once you get on the pitch,
Especially at a cup final.
and the cup final, and especially since they're especially they're supposed to be playing Champions League just a couple of days later. So would they put their best lineup out there, or would they hold back some guys to make sure that they get through in the semifinal leg of the Champions League? So that's another thing too, the juggling of the lineups that coaches have to deal with. But anyway, I bet there's something in Mourinho's contract that said that if he won a cup for Tottenham, he was coach, he would get paid buku bucks for whatever it was. And for every one that he won, he would get more and more money. Well, the Premier League is out. The Europa League is out. So all that leaves is and we're out of the FA Cup. So the only thing left is the EFL Cup. And that happens on Sunday. So instead of having to pay him money in case he wins it, let's get him out of here so we don't have to pay him. I'm pretty sure something like that happened behind the scenes, and maybe it might come out in the next couple months or maybe a couple years down the road. but I think there's something like that in play. I can't prove it, but that's just a hunch.
So Los, next to Sean, you have the longest affiliation of any of us with your particular club. You've been through the development of the Premier League and all of that sort of stuff with Spurs. You know, probably enjoyed a few more downtimes than good ones, but
A lot of downs.
how are you feeling about this announcement that your beloved Tottenham are involved in this new European Super League scheme?
You know, I think everyone who is a fan of the game does not want to see this happen. So I'm against it. I don't think that it's good for football in Europe. I don't think it's good for football anywhere. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to give an alternative to the current Champions League platform. They want to do something different. So I think that what they're saying is, hey, you can continue doing Champions League. We're going to do the Super League over here. And then that essentially turns Champions League into Europa League. And then what does that turn Europa League into? JV Friday Night Soccer? I mean, I'm not
well,
sure.
they just introduced that whole entire new tournament, the Europa Conference League, which I guess if we do all of this, suddenly becomes like the Sunday Night Rec Bowling League.
Something like that.
So maybe they'll experiment with things in that league where instead of just playing soccer, what they'll do is they'll combine it with bowling, right?
Well, I was thinking if the players could go ahead and run on the field and carry maces with them, it'd be a lot more exciting. So
they're going to play. They're going to play soccer with. They're going to play soccer on horseback.
Well, they have something like that. It's called polo.
Mm-hmm.
No, you know, you're going to have like.
Oh, you have to kick the ball from the horse. You can't use a bat.
You have to kick the ball from the horse. We can experiment with something. We can experiment with things like we can use that tournament now, or even maybe we can use the European Super League as an experimental league. You know, like all the crazy ideas anybody's ever had about soccer. You know, let's try 80-minute games instead of 90.
80-minute games where the clock stops whenever the ball goes out.
Yes, and we'll play 4 quarters instead of 2 halves.
Maybe a timeout.
Yeah. And how about
unlimited coaches reviews and unlimited substitutions?
Let me go back in time here. Probably about let me go back about 30 plus years to the 1990 World Cup. I don't know how many of you guys were around. Sean and I were watching, I'm sure. Coach Shee, okay, 1990 World Cup. All right. During the broadcast,
She and I were watching at soccer camp.
Wait, okay. Rai was the provider for the signal for the all the pictures for the tournament, and what they did was something very interesting to me because I'm a numbers guy, and they showed statistics up there. They just kind of flashed them up there as they panned around the crowd, and it said total time played, and it gave 47, 48 minutes, whatever, how much stoppage time they put on there. And then they put underneath there time of ball in play. And it was about, every single time was about 22 to 24 minutes that the ball was in play. And I'm like, well, how about we can Americanize this then and give everybody a 24-minute with start and stop when the ball is in play, kind of like what they do in basketball. And just play 20 minutes, and you get a solid 45 minutes of soccer every single time. It'd be about the same. So that would be an experiment. That would be something they could try in that league.
Getting us back onto the topic of because Los, I think you brought up a really good point about UEFA, and like we should remember that like UEFA just shoved through the 36-team Champions League right under the rug. Right underneath all of this, and they're not the good guys here. I mentioned that on the thread. They're really not the good guys. They're not the good guys for a number of reasons. Like their corruption is unlimited, unbounded, and first, like firstly, they were being corrupted by the clubs that are now going off and saying, fuck you, we don't have to pay you money to corrupt things. We can just corrupt it ourselves. And then and then they're also just they completely failed to address any major problem with the game. So any major problem whatsoever. They don't even attempt to address it.
But with the thing about the 36 team Champions League and the reformat, the Swiss model, that we've all kind of, a lot of that, according to UEFA, was down to negotiations with the European the European Club Association, right? They had a lot of input. This was something that they wanted, they pushed through, and then turned their back on it, right? So it was, we gave you what we could give you, and then you turned around and thumped your nose at us, right? But then again, you're exactly right, Will. UEFA aren't the good guys. This is villains on more villains, right? This is villain on villain crime. I want to turn now to probably the only guy who's not involved in this conversation, because, you know, none of the German teams signed up. Maybe they were waiting to see what the fallout would be and took the smart approach.
I heard PSG and Bayern were purposely not invited. That's what I heard.
Well, I don't think I think PSG hasn't been spoken to. I would find it hard to believe that
you can consider that a non-invitation.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that conversations didn't go on behind the scenes with the likes of PSG and certainly Bayern, being as how successful and how global a brand they are. But Florentino Perez did come out and say that if Bayern doesn't want to be involved and they have not been invited, that the league will go forward. So, Rob, give us your thoughts on this whole kerfuffle.
Oh man, it's been a weird 24 hours. I mean, you know, I thought it was going to be crazy, like Monday, talking about the chaos that has become FC Hollywood over in Munich. But no, the Super League has totally trumped all that, and to Bayern's delight. So as a fan of a member-owned club, a fan of a league that has the 50+1 rule, I'm glad that none of the German teams have, you know, either been invited or have joined it. You know, Der Spiegel, which is one of the good investigative journalist papers in Germany, have said that, produced a document have said that PSG have 15 days to respond to join, and Bayern and Dortmund have 30 days to respond to join. So I don't know who's talking who. I mean, who's right? Perez has said that in an interview that they have not been invited. So we shall see what's going on. But this is really tragic because, you know, we were sort of raised that, you know, to play in the top, you know, the top leagues and to be in European competition, you had to be one of the best and you had to earn your right to be there on merit. And when you see a club like Arsenal and Spurs who have kind of, you know, especially this season, have not done well, have not potentially earned a Champions League spot, you know, try to cement themselves into a top four or a Super League or, you know, a Champions League replacement, you know, it's sad because, you know, it prevents the natural rising of potential future dynasties and talent, you know. And I'm not calling a club like Union Berlin, you know, a future dynasty, but it would have been beautiful and meant something if they can be in Europe and play in Europe. And, you know, and it, to me, and they would earn the right to do it if they made Europe, you know, through their sporting merit. And it's a travesty because, you know, like Karl-Heinz Rummenigge has said, and I quote, "I do not believe the Super League will solve the financial problems of European clubs that have arisen as a result of the coronavirus pandemic." He's actually correct. You know, there's a bunch of all these billionaires that are screaming poverty, but they're still billionaires. Dan Levy's still a billionaire. The Glazers are still billionaires. Man City's still selling oil and making, you know, money. You know, Arsenal's owned by a billionaire as well. I'm just in Barcelona, you know, they are in debt because of their own poor decisions. Real Madrid potentially lost money because they spent so much money on Eden Hazard and he hasn't paid off. You know, So, they're crying poverty, but partially they're responsible for it. This was happening before the coronavirus pandemic started, and it just exacerbated that. But they're the ones crying, but smaller clubs, who are really suffering, who don't have billionaire owners and backers and investors, are the ones who are really suffering. They're not part of the European Super League. So I hate it all around. It's a terrible day for football, and I hope cooler sides prevail. But I think the money's too great, and I think it's bound to happen. Sadly enough.
Thought, Rob, you brought up a really good point, and again, more for Sean than anybody else. For those of us who have grown up as fans of American sports, we're used to this situation where leagues put into play stopgaps that ensure that they don't pay for their own poor decisions. Why else do we need to have salary caps and non-guaranteed contracts and all of that sort of things? It's to prevent them from making poor business sporting decisions that then have longer term impacts on their team. We've seen it in every sport, right? Baseball fans, those among us, will note that day that comes up in May or June every year, Bobby Bonilla Day, where he collects his paycheck from the Mets, and he hasn't played for them in over 20 years. It's some of the ridiculous contracts that have been signed over time.
What a fantastic contract. He was so far future sighted. He's out of baseball, still making money. Like, he was a smart man for doing it. Yeah, we all laughed at him back at the time, but who's laughing now when he's sitting back collecting billions? So
Albert Bell was the same way. He used to have to show up to the Orioles once every year to prove that he was too hurt to play baseball so that he could get that share of the $88 million that he was owed over the course of 10 years, right? So we have all of these stopgaps that we've put in place in American sports to prevent that from happening. And Rob, you're right. Here we have people looking at it again as a business, and they want to profit from, and they want not only to not be punished for their sporting mistakes, but profit from them. Right. And I think that, that is something that is part and parcel to this whole entire thing. You have these clubs that are in debt in large amount because of poor decisions that they have made over the years, and who they've signed the contracts, who they've sold, who they've kept, who they've hired, who they've fired. Right. Not all of them. Certainly I can say for the most part, as much as it pains me to say this, Will, Liverpool have done some actually halfway decent business recently. But when you look at Arsenal, Man United, Roman Abramovich, Chelsea, I mean, all of those, if they are in debt, it's down to their own poor business decisions that they've made.
Can I have a 30 seconds to say something to that? I praised FSG. I praised FSG to the hills. I said, their business decisions are incredible. This is an FSG business decision. Their business decisions have no valid argument right now. This is their worst business decision that they've ever made. It's pretty awful. And, I should have seen this coming when they produced that stupid "This Means More" campaign. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a campaign where they had all of the Liverpool players and Jurgen Klopp sort of doing a video where it was sort of, they were trying to encompass the spirit of Shankly with "This means more." This is Liverpool Football Club and this means more. At the time, I sort of just shook my head and I was like, it's a stupid promotional video. It should have been a sign of things to come with the terrible decisions that have just come out of that stupid organizing business.
Go ahead,
we only
Mike.
know one club in the world that has fantastic promotional videos, and I will leave it like that. Some La Liga team. I'll leave it right there. And I'm
Can I say that as someone who's grown up around American sports, with our static leagues, I'm someone who thinks that the world needs less or more promotion and relegation and less static leagues. You look at Major League Baseball, the Pittsburgh Pirates haven't been relevant in 30 years. And why is that? It's because they're gaming the system. The Major League Baseball has it set up to keep their teams viable. They produce a crap product. They take luxury tax money and they put nothing out on the field, and they haven't for 30 years. I
The
mean,
Baltimore Orioles have been robbing the Washington Nationals for years. Not only have they not been putting any butts in seats, but because of the television contract, they've been taking a significant portion of the Washington Nationals TV money and collecting a tax from them for interfering with their market.
Yeah, I mean, that's all around. You don't think Pittsburgh would try to put some good players out there if the threat
they had
was
to.
get into AAA? Yeah, and if you're talking about these clubs and their poor financial decisions, you look at teams right now that currently exist in the world that don't have billionaire owners. Teams like Wigan, who spent it all to get that one shot, and now they're at the bottom of League One. Because that's what happens when you take the big swing and you don't get there, you go down, you lose.
I think for me,
And
that
that's
was one
a
of the
good
things
thing.
that one of the things that when I was getting into soccer, when I was getting into European football, one of the things that I liked the most was trying to explain this whole entire concept of promotion and relegation, that your sporting merit gets rewarded. And we've talked about it on this show before, how when we look at the table at the end of the year, there are so few what we could call dead rubber matches where, both teams are so settled that neither one of, I think at the end of last season, even on the last day of the season, we maybe found 2 games out of the 10 in the Premier League where there was absolutely nothing at stake for either team on the field, right? It brings that meaning through the season. And by taking it away, that is something that you are taking away from the game. That's going to be a major part of it. I don't care about, we talk about NFL football and how people complained every year at the end of the season that, teams aren't playing anybody their last couple of games of the season. And they've tried with a bunch of schedule manipulations to make those to quote unquote make those games matter. But if you've got 2 teams on opposite ends, neither one of who's playing for anything, how do you make that matter? It's going to take a lot of the excitement that makes it great.
Well,
How do you make it matter?
Chelsea
I'm
are
sure
playing-
you have a way to make it matter, Los.
How do you make it matter? Draft picks.
Yes, we're going to institute. No, if they're going to go with a Indian Premier League system, right? Which is, again, I keep using that because it's essentially what they're doing. I want them to go full in, and every 3 years, every player who wants to appear, there's an auction. And the teams can only they have to go out and you have to bid on the players for a 3-year cycle. Like, if we're going to put our foot in here and we're going to go this route, let's go all the way. Don't half step it. Like, you bid on the players, and that way you can shake up the whole entire league.
But so Chelsea are playing Brighton tomorrow. You know about Brighton, my love of them. But
are you actually going to root for
I
Brighton?
will say this about Brighton. Brighton has not put themselves in that position to be relegated again and again because they don't spend extravagantly. That's good business. That's how you do it. And if the top clubs, if they can't figure out a model that they're not spending themselves out entirely, that's on them. But let me say this: why does this game matter tomorrow? Chelsea aren't going to win. They're not going to win the league. They are in a fight for Europe. Brighton is maybe borderline in the relegation decision. What does this game matter? It doesn't. And you know what? If Chelsea weren't fighting for Europe, I wouldn't watch it tomorrow. I wouldn't take time out of my afternoon. I'm lucky enough to work from home that I can sit there and put the game on, and schedule things around it. But why do I take time out of my day to watch a domestic league if my team's not going to win? And
it's
who
still
cares?
better than a good day at work.
Love of the sport, good competition. Like, why not? Sometimes these crappy relegated teams, man, are good battles, though.
I think we watch the games because we like the games, we like the team, we want to watch the games. I will say though that, and this topic has been broached before. You know, Stead said when it's over here, when your team is out of it, it becomes harder and harder and harder to engage with that. You know, I've made no bones about the fact that I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. When they're bad, you know, I stopped watching. It's hard to get up on Saturdays and go, you know, when I endured that brutal stretch with the Sixers and the process. And yeah, I actually was one of the people who was stupid enough to go and see them live when they came down to DC. And all I remember was running through all of Verizon Center singing "We Suck and We Know We Do," which endeared me to a lot of the other Philadelphia fans who were also joining in, because we all knew we sucked and we knew we did. But I can't say like I was watching that team when they were playing on television. It was just we were bad, right? Part of not having that relegation and promotion battle is what it is going to be what keeps you interested week in and week out. You know, we've all touched on the fact that we like seeing the games against Juventus and Real Madrid and those teams, because when they're playing, they mean something. There's a meaning to them, right? What is the meaning to this European Super League going to be? You know, what are we playing for? Yeah, it's a colossal crash grab.
You know, the meaning of PSG Bayern was it was 2 games to go on in an incredible tournament. I know Bayern aren't in it, but neither are PSG. But like, you know, Real Juventus, you know what, they play twice a year. There's no and then they're saying there's going to be a 3-game, they call it NBA style, because let's face it, that's what they want. They want the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's going to be an NBA style playoffs at the end of it. Like, you know.
Wait. I did not hear anything about playoffs.
Yeah.
Playoffs?
Seriously?
We're talking about playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Playoffs?
They really want the American game, don't they?
Yeah.
They really want what we have here in America.
No, but it's going to be like that.
Don't.
It's going to be close again. It's going to be closer. It's going to be a slightly different situation where I think like the top 4 will make it into the quarterfinals or the top, and then there's a playoff. Top 8.
The
top 8.
There's only 12. You're gonna put 8 of them in there,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They said they're going to be 20. They said they want 20.
Unless you can be guaranteed that Arsenal and Tottenham won't be in those 8 qualifiers.
Well, I think the other thing is though, and what we haven't by Christmas. I think what we haven't mentioned is just how, because I think it's going to take one of these 12 clubs to get cold feet and pull out, and the whole entire deck of cards collapses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. It'll happen this week.
I think it will. I think
it's
not happen. Yeah.
I don't know that it will happen, because if they went public with it, like they've gone public with it, I think that the clubs have signed, or the owners of the clubs have signed large financial guarantees that they will be in for the long haul.
I have no doubt that they have signed papers with promises. I have no doubt that those papers don't have out clauses in there, because these people didn't make the money that they had being stupid, right? And there's got to be an out in there. I mean, if there's, Sean, Will, I really respect, and I think that you're right on. And they've announced that they said that the papers were signed amongst those 12 teams on Saturday. But the proposal that they gave us and what looks to be developing are 2 totally different things.
Mike, what they've managed to do is find a financial model that means they can put this circus on and still get away with having no fans. It doesn't matter if fans turn up. If the stadium were empty, they've been guaranteed 400 fucking million pounds a year.
Well, we have
And we all know
What's
that
been
that
going
money is going to go into buying whatever players are available, the best players in the world, because they can afford to offer them bigger salaries.
No, it's not. It's not, because that 400 million, of that 400 million that they've got guaranteed, let's be honest, with the possible exception of one owner out of all of us, you can give the Glazers, you can give Stan Kroenke, to a certain extent, you can even give John Henry and FSG $400 million. I guarantee you, if you give the Glazers $400 million, 100 will go back into the club. 300 is going into their pocket.
Or Tampa Bay.
I was
They
going to
can
say,
do whatever they want with the
all
money.
Kroenke's money is going to go into the LA Rams.
Well, wait, I mean, why do they look? The NFL teams don't need to worry about it. Their profits and P&Ls are covered by the television revenue there.
Mm-hmm.
So every team is guaranteed $400 million a year.
Yeah.
I
That
don't know
means
if
after
it's 400.
That means
I don't
after
know whether
3
it's
years,
400 a year, or what they said was there's a pot that guarantees them $350 million to sustain, right?
$350 million a year per club.
They didn't say whether
per
it was
club,
per year.
per club
or-
per year. If it's $350 million per club per year, then Levy can finally pay off the note on the Spurs Stadium.
It didn't say that.
Then really, you know what? I think this is going to happen just because that you're dealing with a bunch of arrogant billionaires who are not going to be told by the likes of the hoi polloi like you and I that they can't make their money. So I mean that's just for certain. But what would pull the rug out from this is if the sponsors, who are secret as of now, if they see fallout and decide to pull out.
Well, I think that let's be honest, they were prepared for the blowback that they've gotten this week, right?
I don't know if they were. I don't know if they were. I don't think that they thought that they were going to see blowback from their own domestic leagues to the point of talk about expulsion. Because
I think that was the one that caught them by surprise. And they have said that they want to work with UEFA for them to be included. I am unique in my view, and will admit that I think that the domestic part and the sanctions from UEFA are the things that carry more weight than anything else, right? But that's just my view, right? I could be wrong, and I'll be the first to admit it. I think that even with, and I don't think it's $350 million per year. I think it's $350 million up front until they get a contract. JP Morgan isn't just going to pay this money without anything coming back in. They have to see a return on revenue.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they haven't negotiated a TV deal yet. That's all.
Yeah, but I
Because
mean,
you-
if there's
Still
there's
just
no
idea.
if who's going to negotiate a TV deal if there's no good players?
Amazon. Well, yeah, there's no players.
Amazon, Disney Plus. I mean, that's the two big things that they're talking about getting right now.
Amazon, Disney Plus, and again,
Netflix.
Amazon, Netflix, Disney Plus, yeah, all great.
The Zone.
You know what? None of those companies got to where they are by being dumb, right? This league works, and I think the owners think that it works based on the brand names of the teams that you've got involved, but the TV rights are going to be looking at who's playing, right? If all of a sudden it says, no, you cannot, I think that you're going to have, if you have a mass exodus of players, of the top quality players saying, like, we're not going to do this because we don't want to be involved and we don't want to risk our international careers. I know you said, like, hey, in the long term, it's possible, oh, it's hard for so-and-so to turn down this amount of life-changing money. In the long term, yeah, you're right. In the short term, though, you need as much star power to get this off the ground, right? Think about the players that you need to be involved because you need to be able to market stars. And if there aren't any, what are you going to do?
That's what I wanted to bring up earlier, was that, like, what if the players, like, Stan, you brought it up that, like, oh, if you're offering them like someone that grew up in a shanty shack that, like, like hundreds of millions of dollars, like, well, they're going to turn it down. But, like, isn't that the model of, like, the Chinese leagues? And, like, we don't see that, like, I mean, we see some players flocking to them, but it's not like it's becoming a massive super league.
They
But
did for a while, and now
I was
they're
going to
all
say
coming back.
they're coming back because, though, if you've seen what's happening in the Chinese league right now, the corruption in that league that league might fold in the next 5 years. That's why they're coming back. And let's not act like that wasn't enticing. But also, what I was pointing out, though, is that the leagues, the way that it was going to look was not necessarily that a team's going to be playing for 10 million or 20 million. We're talking about a guy who's going to be playing for 500,000 to $1 million or 20 million. That is a much, much different conversation, because it's the old, like Chris Rock and Eddie Murphy have like dueling jokes about this, where if you both have 10 million, you get 5 million, you get 5 million, you're not starving. But if you make 30,000, you might have to kill her. There's a difference when just how much money are you actually talking about. If you're splitting 20 million or 10 million, that's not that big of a deal. But if you're down to somebody saying, wow, I can make 500% more by doing this, as opposed to then, especially if you're from a country, let's say you're Emmanuel Adebayor, your national team is Togo. You rarely ever qualify for even the FIFA Club of Nations, but you are a talented player. Let's say you're Henrik Mkhitaryan, who plays for Armenia. Okay, you're a star player. You have world-class talent. Your national team will not qualify for the Euros. That's a much different conversation.
A
That's
league that is built on Henrik Mkhitaryan's and Emmanuel Adebayor's.
That's not fair. But see, you can't take the point that I was making to explain what I meant to Will and then twist that into something else. You can't do that. So what I'm saying, though, is that
the point that I'm making is a two-guy soccer show. We do it all the time.
Yes, and it wouldn't be the two guys soccer show if I didn't complain about it every week too. So
it's more I have a more fundamental question
after a while.
What I was alluding to, though, is that you can't use national pride as a reason for someone not to take the money and go play for this league. That's my point.
You've seen that national pride has only run so far when it comes to money, and you saw that with Joel Matip. He retired from his national team at the age of 24 because Liverpool said he couldn't play for them.
And Deco chose to play for Portugal, even though he's from Brazil.
The
national team doesn't matter.
We're talking about a theoretical, a theoretical kid growing up, let's say in the favelas in Brazil. Does he dream of playing for Barcelona, or does he dream of playing for the Brazilian national team and winning the World Cup?
Both.
I mean, I think
that's a kid, though. When that kid probably does think the same way when he's 19 and he's 20.
Are we talking about Mino Raiola, or are we talking about the kid?
I think the thing that we're saying, the fundamental thing is, yes, national pride only goes so far, especially though when you have a national team, when you're the star player on a national team that's not going to qualify for many tournaments, right? If you are Andre Blake on the Jamaican national team and you know that you're going to struggle to qualify for anything, why not take the money and run, right? But what we have seen is, my question remains the same. Can you build a league with players like who are in that situation or are already retired, right? Or do you need, but what you need are your stars. You need your stars, and by and large, they have a different sort of connection to their national team, and they may not be willing to give it up as quickly, right? You name me the last person that finished in the top 5 or 10 of a Ballon d'Or who played for a cut-rate national team. And you can't even give me Lewandowski because, at least Poland's qualified for a couple of tournaments, right?
We have
Modric, they went to a World Cup final.
Yeah.
We have a precedent in the UK on this. What you're talking about, Mike, is whether they'll take the risk of not being able to play for their national team,
right,
as one of the punishments that's being proposed by getting into the Super League. Is that right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then rugby union did exactly that in the UK. If you went and joined a French club because they were paying players double, treble the salaries, you moved to France, you didn't get picked for England. And I think that's still in place. And what we found is some of our better rugby players have gone to France, but 2-3 years later, they've come back. But they're also getting central contracts from the England Rugby Union. So
it's the same with cricket with the
exactly.
the
It's exactly
Bozeman's.
the same with cricket.
Or not the Bozeman's. You have the I forget what the rule is, where you can play for a county, but you can't play for your national team. A lot of the South African players do it, but they're like the only ones that do.
Yeah.
The South Africans and the West Indians, and they're the only ones that do it.
So I can only talk on England's behalf, but quite frankly, you talk to most football fans in England who have a team. Most people had two teams, I think, up until 20 years ago, which was their team and England. Now, England is just so far off the parameter. You know, we've been waiting to win the fucking thing again since 1966.
I think that's part of it.
Most people have died who were actually at that game. So I don't think it's going to make a difference. That's all.
I think it's going to make a huge. At least I don't know. Rob, you can talk about this too. Like I think in South America, it's a totally different thing. Like I think the World Cup like just actually means more. Like it just like I'm sorry, but you're gonna give up the pot. Like who's the best player in the world? It's Messi. All right, like that national team, like Argentina, like. They are like it's all about making and going to the World Cup and doing well, and like that's the one knock that we all give Messi is that he hasn't won the World Cup.
He lives in Spain.
yeah, but at the same like I think that would actually have a big effect on what like Chelsea Mike was saying that you're gonna say that if I go to Barcelona that means that I can't represent Brazil. Like I think that is actually going to mean a lot for them, and that's a huge talent pool that doesn't go to this year like this Super League. So,
right, Mike, what was it that you had to say, real quick?
I mean, I think it's been set out. I think it like people like Neymar. Yes, they're going to go to the thing, but like David Luiz, for example. For one more crack at a World Cup, which I don't know. I mean, he's old, but that's just an example. He's a guy.
Watch your mouth.
I love Sideshow Bob. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, we all love David Luiz. Come on now.
But a guy like that who was never the best in the world. If he could go make a real lot of money at a place and still play for his national team, does he go play for Chelsea? I don't think so.
Well, and we did see this to a certain extent with the Chinese Super League because a lot of the players who went there were basically told, like, if you're going to go there, you're going to be playing against inferior opposition and you're almost self-eliminating. Oscar was one of them.
Drogba made it about a week and a half, and he was like, "Get me out of here."
And you were self-eliminating yourself from international and you saw the type of players that went over there and took that money. And again, I think by and large, what it was were they names people who we knew? Yeah, but were they people who were good enough to start this sort of venture around? And I think the proof is in the pudding there, and the answer to that is no. And you're not going to build a league, and that's why I think that we'll keep talking about this because I gotta believe this is far from concluded, right? So I mean, geez.
Well, we're not concluding anything here. We're just talking about all the goings on. I really think that something is going to happen this week, and we could be not surprised, but I'm feeling something's going to shake. Something's going to happen, and we may not like what's going to happen, what's going to come our way.
Yeah, I think that the first thing that could happen is, and I think it should happen, is the Premier League are within their rights to throw these 6 teams out. And
But have
then
they
we'll-
done anything yet? Is
No,
the
they
question.
haven't done anything yet. But I'm saying they're within their rights, Mike. So Los is right. Anything could happen this week. And imagine the chaos if they suddenly threw those clubs out before the season was finished.
I think that harsh sanctions like that and FIFA actually having a backbone, which we can be honest isn't going to happen. I've said it in the chat in this thing. The World Cup's in Qatar. And also you have to remember the next real World Cup, because of this World Cup in the Qatar, which is going to be in the winter, mind you,
in the United
isn't going to
States.
be until 2026. So you're thinking about players that are 29 years old right now, thinking there's a good chance that I will not be playing in the World Cup. See, we have a lot of brilliant players right now between the ages of 28 and 32. There's a good chance they don't play in the next World Cup that's really going to mean something. Because
I think that's
that
a
one in
big one.
Qatar, it might mean something, might draw some viewers, but it's in December.
Well, the EPL is meeting tomorrow with all the teams except the 6 to determine the fate of the 6. So now here's the question. If they decide to take the 6 that have wanted to move the Super League and take them out of Premier League and say, no, you can no longer play in our domestic competition, then I guess that means that Norwich is in safety then for the next couple of years.
I think I
I
do
honestly
think
just
that
think it's
We'll
losing.
never
think
get rid
you'll
of Brighton. Oh,
And Leicester are champions.
yeah. And West Ham are in the
Jimmy,
champions.
West Ham draws second.
Yeah. I think the thing that I do think that's a realistic possibility.
And player
that
of the
you'll see
year will be Jesse Lingard.
I do think that's a realistic possibility that you'll see a threat of expulsion. But just to wrap that part up, I don't think you can go through with it simply because they have not actually done anything yet. You said, Sean, they had to compete in the other league. Based on what I was reading, they could say that if they choose to compete, if they choose to go through with it, they can be expelled. They can have a points deduction for every game that they play in this, or they could have the other teams could refuse to compete against them. But outside of the announcement, keep in mind, outside of the announcement, they haven't actually done anything yet. And that's going to be the big one, because if you threaten to kick me out of the competition, I'm going to say, well, you can't punish me in this manner for saying something that I might do in 2 years.
Or 2 months.
They said as soon as practically possible. All right, gentlemen, I know we can't solve this all today, and I really want to thank you all for coming on and joining us and helping us all. It was cathartic to be able to process. I don't know if any of you feel better or more confused. More pissed off.
Yes.
Or
All
how
I
you're
got to
feeling.
say is, well, be thankful you don't have to transcribe this show, because I believe more words have been spoken in the last 2 hours on this podcast than we have ever done in the years we have been doing this shows, by at least threefold.
That's very nice. Also, I'd like to say, I've just found the receipt for 2021. Can I get a free refund?
I've been asking, and you know what though? Here's the problem. The free trial period on 2021 ran out about 18 days ago.
Hey, wait, I got an extension on my taxes. You can't tell me I can't get a refund now. Come on.
I got charged. It's a free trial.
It's a free trial, but it was 90 days, man. 90 days.
I gotta give a shout out to Los. Welcome to the ex Mourinho club, buddy.
Yeah, welcome, bud.
I gotta say, he didn't leave us decimated, but we're just kind of like,
I just want to say,
we have t-shirts, Los. We have t-shirts.
Send me one.
Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
Paraphrase Suge Knight. You tired for your club, not really caring about you, joining different leagues. They come to the Bundesliga.
Hey, you know what? Hey, we were supposed to have a show to get Sean MLS team. Rob, I think it's your job to find all of us our own Bundesliga teams outside of Bayern Munich and Bruce.
TSG.
I'll tell you what,
Hoffenheim.
I want Wolfsburg.
Hey,
I wanted
That would be
Schalke,
fun.
but never mind.
No, well,
But we will.
And that could be fun.
We will do MLS speed dating for Sean next week, where we can get back to something because leave it to the Glazers. Leave it to the Glazers. I had a whole entire great bit planned for the second half of this show that was going to be fun and stupid. Yeah. Mess it all up for me.
I could well be
all
looking
right.
for a new team full stop anyway very soon.
Yeah, I think what we may be doing is we may be just going around and soliciting opinions on other teams that we can root for outside of the ones that we root for. By the way, if this goes through, if there's anybody in the market for a really nice collection of Manchester United jerseys, I'm accepting offers.
Hey, don't forget, there's a club, the FC United Football Club of Manchester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Manchester.
I never thought that I would have to get rid of them, but I'm thinking that, well, hey, maybe if I can sell them all even at a loss, I can help fund new floors.
So Man United and Man City, if they happen to go bye-bye, Leeds benefits.
Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. So thank you to Leo. Thank you to Celtic Cam, Andy the Hammer, Rob, Los, Chelsea Mike, Coach G, British Will, Coach Matt, British London Sean, and Stead for all coming on and joining me. It really has been the Too Many Guys soccer show tonight. There's too many of y'all to keep track of.
Too many.
We did all right this week. We'll do better next week. See ya. Peace.